Look at this wasteland. This is the Arabian desert. Searing heat, zero shade, and rain is basically a myth. If you were dropped here, you'd last maybe 2 days. But over 2,000 years ago, a nomadic tribe called the Nabataeans didn't just survive here. They built a Las Vegas-style megacity right in the middle of it. Welcome to Petra, the rose-red city. You've probably seen its famous treasury carved into the cliff face in movies. But the real treasure of Petra wasn't gold. It was something far more valuable in the desert. Water. How did a city of 30,000 people thrive? In a place that gets less than 6 inches of rain a year, they didn't just have drinking water. They had lush gardens, giant fountains, and a massive swimming pool. Yes, a swimming pool in the desert. To understand this madness, we have to look at who the Nabataeans were. Originally, they were tough desert nomads. They controlled the ancient world's most lucrative monopoly, the frankincense and myrrh trade routes. Every empire, from Rome to Egypt, needed these spices for religious rituals and medicine. The Nabataeans were the ancient equivalent of oil billionaires. But billionaires need a secure bank vault to store their wealth. They found it in the Shara Mountains, a hidden canyon surrounded by impenetrable rock walls. It was the perfect fortress, hiding them from greedy empires and desert raiders. But there was just one tiny, deadly problem. This entire canyon had absolutely no permanent water source. Building a metropolis without a river is like building an airplane without wings. It just doesn't make sense. But the Nabataeans were not just merchants, they were master engineers. They realized that the desert doesn't completely lack water when it does rain in the surrounding mountains. The water doesn't soak into the hard, baked earth. Instead, it rushes down the rocky slopes, gathering speed and volume, turning into a deadly flash flood. A wall of water would roar through the narrow canyon called the Sick, destroying everything in its path. If you build a city at the bottom of that funnel, you'd be washed away in minutes. So the Nabataeans did the unthinkable. They decided to catch the tsunami. Before they carved a single temple, they had to tame the mountains. They became hydro-engineers. They mapped out every single watershed, every slope, every drop of potential rain across 92 square kilometers. They essentially turned the entire mountain range into a giant rainwater harvesting funnel. But how do you stop 1 million gallons of raging floodwater from drowning your beautiful capital city? The answer was a masterclass in ancient infrastructure. At the entrance of the Sick, where the floodwaters would naturally rush in, they built a massive diversion dam. This wasn't just a pile of rocks. It was a carefully calculated barrier designed to block the killer waves and redirect them into a massive 90-meter-long tunnel carved entirely through the solid mountain rock. Think about that for a second. Without dynamite, heavy equipment, or any modern machinery, they chiseled a huge tunnel through a mountain just to bypass the deadly flood. This tunnel brilliantly funneled the excess water into the surrounding valleys, safely away from the city center. But they didn't just throw the water away. In the middle of the desert, every single drop is sacred. Behind the dams, they carve hundreds of underground cisterns, giant bell-shaped caves, lined with specialized waterproof cement to prevent even the slightest leakage into the earth. When the violent flash floods came, the water was smoothly guided into these dark, cool vaults. Kept deep underground, the precious water wouldn't evaporate in the blistering Arabian sun. It was an ingenious natural refrigerator for their entire municipal water supply. This hidden network of cisterns was so vast, it could hold over 10 million gallons of fresh water. That is more than enough to easily sustain the entire population through the long, brutal dry seasons. It's essentially a prehistoric bank account, but instead of gold, they deposited water during the winter and withdrew it during the summer. But keeping people alive is one thing. Making a city luxurious is another. The Nabataeans wanted running water. They wanted to turn a tap and have fresh water flow, just like we do today. To achieve this, they needed to bring water from a permanent spring called Ain Musa, the Spring of Moses, located about 8 kilometers outside the city walls. But moving water across 8 kilometers of rough, extremely rocky, mountainous terrain is an absolute logistical nightmare. If the slope is too steep, gravity pulls the water too fast, building up pressure until it shatters the pipes. But if it's too flat, the water simply stagnates, breeds bacteria, and becomes completely undrinkable. They needed absolute mathematical precision. Enter the Nabataeans' secret weapon, terracotta pipes. They didn't just dig crude ditches in the dirt. They manufactured thousands of these interlocking clay pipes on an industrial scale. These weren't simple tubes. They were engineered with bell-end spigot joints, allowing them to connect seamlessly. And they were sealed with specialized waterproof mortar to prevent even a single drop from being lost to the desert. But here's the truly mind-blowing part, the gradient. The engineers literally carved continuous ledges into the solid walls of the sick to safely hold these fragile pipes, maintaining a mathematically flawless downward slope of exactly 4 degrees across miles of terrain, and to handle unexpected water pressure spikes during heavy spring flows. They designed specialized pipes with narrow choke points and built-in expansion chambers. This acted exactly like a modern pressure release valve. It ensured the delicate clay system never exploded under the sheer force of gravity. This gravity-fed plumbing network was an absolute marvel of the ancient world. Over 200 kilometers of these pipes snaked seamlessly through the harsh, unforgiving mountains, bringing a continuous, steady stream of fresh, cool water directly into the heart of Petra. They had public drinking fountains on street corners, private villas with running water, and massive, luxurious bathhouses where citizens could wash away the harsh desert dust. The psychological impact of this endless water supply on visiting merchants was absolutely enormous. Imagine crossing the lethal, scorching desert for weeks on camelback, arriving exhausted, completely dehydrated, and covered head to toe in sand, only to suddenly find a hidden city offering you limitless fresh water, warm baths, and lush green gardens. The Nabataeans were flexing their immense wealth to the entire ancient world. The absolute pinnacle of this flex was the monumental pool complex right in the city center. In a region where a single drop of water literally meant life or death, using it for a massive decorative pool was the ultimate display of absolute power and unimaginable wealth. This wasn't just a small puddle. The pool was a colossal 44-meter wide basin, holding thousands of cubic meters of fresh water, constantly evaporating under the hot sun, but instantly refilled by the continuous pipe network. And right in the middle, an extravagant island pavilion where the royal family and elites could party and relax. Surrounding the pool wasn't just bare sand, but an elaborate, sprawling botanical garden. They imported exotic plants, rare fruit trees, and delicate flowers that had absolutely no business growing in a wasteland. To keep this impossible garden green, they engineered a hidden underground trickle irrigation system, feeding perfectly measured drops of water directly to the roots of every single plant, minimizing evaporation. Rome had its bloody colosseums to show off its strength. Petra had this, an absolute oasis of arrogance. Every visiting Roman diplomat and foreign merchant left Petra with the exact same terrifying thought. These people have conquered nature itself. They are completely untouchable. But that incredible, flaunted wealth and arrogance was a dangerous double-edged sword. When you carelessly flaunt a shimmering jewel in the middle of a barren desert, it's only a matter of time before the biggest, most dangerous military empire in the world decides they want to take it. But no empire lasts forever. The Nabataeans had conquered the desert, but they couldn't conquer shifting geopolitics. By 106 AD, the Roman Empire, jealous of Petra's immense wealth, peacefully annexed the Nabataean kingdom. They simply absorbed them. The Romans brought their own imperial architecture, adding a grand colonnaded street and expanding the massive amphitheater. But the soul of Petra was changing. It was no longer an independent, untouchable desert fortress. It It was just another Roman province. However, the real death blow to the Rose City wasn't a military siege by Roman legions. It was an economic shift. Foreign traders had discovered new, faster, and cheaper maritime sea routes straight across the Red Sea. They could sail directly to Egypt and Rome, completely avoiding the grueling overland desert journey and Petra's high taxes. The lucrative frankincense stopped flowing through the sick, and when the trade stopped, the money completely dried up. Without their immense wealth, the city simply couldn't afford the constant, meticulous maintenance their delicate hydro network absolutely required. Pipes needed replacing, dams needed clearing of sand, and cisterns had to be replastered. But the treasury was empty. And then the earth decided to deliver the final, crushing blow. In 363 AD, a massive earthquake shattered the entire region. The violent tremors cracked the intricate terracotta pipes and completely shattered the carefully carved rock channels. The massive diversion dam at the entrance of the Sick was severely damaged, compromising the city's main defense against floods. The hidden underground cisterns cracked open, letting the precious millions of gallons of stored water drain uselessly deep into the sand. The impossible engineering marvel that kept 30,000 people alive in the desert was broken, and there was no money left to fix it. The broken terracotta pipes cracked further and filled with desert sand. The diversion dams failed, and the flash floods violently reclaimed the Sick. Slowly, the magnificent oasis withered. The surviving population dispersed, and the rose-red city was left entirely to the wind and the local Bedouin tribes, who kept its exact location a fiercely guarded secret. For over a millennium, the Western world completely forgot Petra even existed. That is, until 1812, when a young Swiss explorer named Johann Ludwig Burckhardt decided to find the lost city. Knowing the locals would kill any foreign treasure hunter, he cleverly disguised himself as an Arab scholar wanting to sacrifice a goat at a nearby tomb. His reluctant guide led him through the dark, winding, 2-kilometer-long maze of the Sick. And as he stepped out of the shadows, he became the first Westerner in 1,000 years to lay eyes on the majestic treasury. He brought the legend back to life. Today, Petra is a modern wonder of the world. Millions of tourists walk through that exact same canyon every single year, pointing their expensive cameras at the giant facades carved into the rock. But they often walk right past the faint, dusty lines carved into the canyon walls, completely missing the real masterpiece. Because the true genius of Petra isn't just in the monumental stone temples. It's in the unseen pipes, the hidden dams, and the empty cisterns. The Nabataeans taught us a profound historical lesson. With enough ingenuity, humans can literally make the desert bloom. They didn't arrogantly fight against the deadly forces of nature. They patiently studied it and partnered with it. And that makes them the greatest water engineers the ancient world has ever seen. Thanks for joining me in the desert. Stay curious, and I'll see you in the next historical adventure.